Ask German and Spanish speakers to, say, describe a bridge, like the one here. Bridge happens to be grammatically feminine in German, grammatically masculine in Spanish. German speakers are more likely to say bridges are beautiful, elegant, these stereotypically feminine words, whereas Spanish speakers will be more likely to say they're strong or long, these masculine words. Languages also differ in how they describe events, right? So you take an event like this, an accident. In English, it's fine to say, he broke the vase. In a language like Spanish, you might be more likely to say, the vase broke, or the vase broke itself. If it's an accident, you wouldn't say that someone did it. In English, quite weirdly, we can even say things like, I broke my arm. Now, in lots of languages, you couldn't use that construction unless you are a lunatic and you went out looking to break your arm and you succeeded, right? If it was an accident, you would use a different construction. Now, this has consequences. So people who speak different languages will pay attention to different things depending on what their language usually requires them to do. So we show the same accident to English speakers and Spanish speakers. English speakers will remember who did it. Because English requires you to say, he did it, he broke the vase. Whereas Spanish speakers might be less likely to remember who did it if it's an accident, but they're more likely to remember that it was an accident. They're more likely to remember the intention. So two people watch the same event, witness the same crime, but end up remembering different things about that event. This has implications, of course, for eyewitness testimony. It also has implications for blame and punishment. So if you take English speakers and I just show you someone breaking a vase and I say, he broke the vase, as opposed to I say, the vase broke, even though you can witness it yourself, you can watch the video, you can watch the crime against the vase, you will punish someone more, you will blame someone more if I just said he broke it, as opposed to it broke. Right? The language guides our reasoning about events. Now, I've given you a few examples of how language can profoundly shape the way we think, and it does so in a variety of ways. So language can have big effects, like we saw with space and time, where people can lay out space and time in completely different coordinate frames from each other. Language can also have really deep effects. That's what we saw with the case of number. Having count words in your language, having number words, opens up the whole world of mathematics. Of course, if you don't count, you can't do algebra. You can't do any of the things that would be required to build a room like this or make this broadcast, right? This little trick of number words gives you a stepping stone into a whole cognitive realm. Language can also have really early effects, what we saw in the case of color, right? These are really simple, basic perceptual decisions. We make thousands of them all the time, and yet language is getting in there and fussing even with these tiny little perceptual decisions that we make. Language can have really broad effects. So the case of grammatical gender may be a little silly, but at the same time, grammatical gender applies to all nouns. That means language can shape how you're thinking about anything that can be named by a noun. It's a lot of stuff. And finally, I gave you an example of how language can shape things that have personal weight to us. Ideas like blame and punishment or eyewitness memory. These are important things in our daily lives. Now, the beauty of linguistic diversity is that it reveals to us just how ingenious and how flexible the human mind is. Human minds have invented not one cognitive universe, but 7,000. There's 7,000 languages spoken around the world. And we can create many more. Languages, of course, are living things, things that we can hone and change to suit our needs. Now, the tragic thing is that we're losing so much of this linguistic diversity all the time. So we're losing about one language a week, and by some estimates, half of the world's languages will be gone in the next 100 years. And the even worse news is that right now, almost everything we know about the human mind and the human brain is based on studies of usually American English-speaking undergraduates at universities, right? That excludes almost all humans, right? So what we know about the human mind is actually incredibly narrow and biased. and our science has to do better. I want to leave you with this final thought. I've told you about how speakers of different languages think differently, but of course that's not about how people elsewhere think. It's about how you think. It's how the language that you speak shapes the way that you think, right? And that gives you the opportunity to ask, why do I think the way that I do? How could I think differently? And also, what thoughts do I wish to create? Thank you very much.
¿Qué tal amigos? ¿Cómo están? Yo soy Andrés Simón y hoy me vine a las universidades a preguntarles a los chicos y chicas acerca del poder de las decisiones. ¿Quieren ver qué respondieron? Venga. ¿Ustedes qué tan buenos o qué tan malos son para tomar decisiones?
No tan buenos.
La verdad, yo tomo muy malas decisiones.
Yo soy como bien exacta en tomar decisiones.
Muy malos.
Tengo una pregunta, ¿ustedes ahorran?
No.
Yo cuando tengo una causa o un objetivo fijo, ahorro hasta lo que, o sea, ni como por eso.
No tengo esa conciencia, nunca la tuve.
Yo sí ahorro.
Si en este momento yo les digo, les doy 1 millón de pesos en efectivo, ¿en qué se lo gastan?
¿Ropa?
Nosotros somos amigos y estamos empezando un negocio. Entonces yo creo que esa plata la usaríamos para el negocio.
¿Qué hacen si en este momento les doy ya 5 millones de pesos en efectivo?
Pago todo lo que debo y compro ropa y me pego una fiesta bien azarosa.
Yo sí guardaría la gran mayoría.
Ahorrarlos para estudiar en el futuro, me imagino yo.
Quería hacer este video porque quería hacer como conciencia del poder de las decisiones y que en verdad lo que decidamos en este momento sí es súper crucial para lo que va a pasar en el futuro. Bienvenidos a una nueva generación en donde avanzamos juntos, esa que conoce el poder de las decisiones. Eres parte de la generación por venir.
All right, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you have unfriended someone on Facebook because they said something offensive about politics or religion, childcare, food? And how many of you know at least one person that you avoid because you just don't want to talk to them? You know, it used to be that in order to have a polite conversation, we just had to follow the advice of Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, stick to the weather and your health. But these days, with climate change and anti-vaxxing, those subjects are not safe either. So this world that we live in, this world in which every conversation has the potential to devolve into an argument where our politicians can't speak to one another and where even the most trivial of issues have someone fighting both passionately for it and against it, it's not normal. Pew Research did a study of 10,000 American adults, and they found that at this moment we are more polarized, we are more divided than we ever have been in history. We're less likely to compromise, which means we're not listening to each other, and we make decisions about where to live, who to marry, and even who our friends are going to be based on what we already believe. Again, that means we're not listening to each other. A conversation requires a balance between talking and listening, and somewhere along the way we lost that balance. Now, part of that is due to technology, the smartphones that you all either have in your hands or close enough that you could grab them really quickly. According to Pew Research, about 1/3 of American teenagers send more than 100 texts a day. And many of them, almost most of them, are more likely to text their friends than they are to talk to them face to face. There's this great piece in The Atlantic. It was written by a high school teacher named Paul Barnwell. And he gave his kids a communication project. He wanted to teach them how to speak on a specific subject without using notes. And he said this: I came to realize that conversational competence might be the single most overlooked skill we fail to teach. Kids spend hours each day engaging with ideas and each other through screens, but rarely do they have an opportunity to hone their interpersonal communication skills. It might sound like a funny question, but we have to ask ourselves, is there any 21st century skill more important than being able to sustain coherent, confident conversation? Now, I make my living talking to people. Nobel Prize winners, truck drivers, billionaires, kindergarten teachers, heads of state, plumbers. I talk to people that I like, I talk to people that I don't like, I talk to some people that I disagree with deeply on a personal level, but I still have a great conversation with them. So I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes or so teaching you how to talk
En
and
este
how
video
to
vamos a
listen.
hacer un brevísimo repaso.
Many of you have already heard a lot of advice on this, things like look the person